So yeah, I want to give a kudos to Nick and Madeline for building this out. I think it's going to be a great resource for our membership to have a dedicated landing page for these office hour sessions. As you can see, there's quick link access to join the Zoom room, view the schedule, and access the past recordings. I like how the join Zoom room option is really front and center there. And then beyond that, there's a nice interactive scroll table that has office hours topics, descriptions, and related dates. And this is something that was worked on with staff. And then, we received feedback from the Member Outreach and Engagement Committee for the development of this table. And then there's also a view option for the CPCNH calendar because these do get populated in the calendar as well. So that's another way folks can quickly access the public calendar to see what topics are upcoming. And then another nice feature that Nick's been building out for this is the past office hours recordings. So these sessions are recorded and hosted on one of our YouTube channels, and you can easily play recorded office hours through the embedded links within the page. So you can see a number of them here, as well as one of the more recent sessions there. So I'll stop with that, but just wanted to make sure that folks on this call were aware of that update. And again, thanks to Nick and Madeline for your work on that resource. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Henry, and Deana may want to chime on this as well. But just for an update on the PUC decision and the implications of that.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. It was a good week for the energy market and market competition and community power in the policy space in New Hampshire, and the PUC ruled in favor of fair market competition in a precedent-setting decision in a Unitil case where they rejected this cost-shifting proposal that's been discussed a lot lately, where the Public Utility Commission had sort of directed utilities to explore moving energy supply costs into stranded cost charges, which would have distorted prices in the market in a sort of anti-competitive way. And the PUC, the Community Power Coalition New Hampshire applauds the commission's decision to sort of uphold fair market competition in the state. This is really the result of communities, businesses, residents all across New Hampshire showing up at the legislature, in their local media, at the Public Utility Commission to really clarify this issue and raise awareness for it. So kudos to everybody across the board who's been involved in this. It's a key precedent and it's a big win. There is another case, the Eversource case, where they're taking up a similar sort of cost shifting question, but the expectation is that this precedent that's been set with Unitil will then sort of carry forward into other cases. And it's important to note this is a win for the renewable energy industry in the state. So net metering generators, solar, hydro, other local renewable energy generators, they are compensated at the utility energy supply rate. And what this ruling does, it sort of preserves the integrity of accurate pricing of that rate. And if they had moved to sort of shift supply costs into stranded cost charges, that would sort of deflate the energy supply rate and it would deflate compensation to clean energy projects without real justification. It would sort of degrade the compensation without appropriately recognizing the value of those projects. So win for renewable energy firms as well. And yeah, Community Power Coalition is looking forward to working with the membership, with industry partners, with regulators, with utilities to sort of continue to find ways we can modernize the energy system. Um, Something that has become clear in this process through sort of the testimony and the back and forth, there's a better understanding of some of these sort of state administered or utility administered systems on which the energy market relies. So there's infrastructure, there's things like meters and the data that comes out of meters. There are load settlement systems. Load settlement is essentially matching of customer usage estimations with actual energy purchase in the wholesale power market. And through the proceedings, we've come to better understand some of those systems and ways in which they may be outdated or in need of modernization, and ways in which the current structure is sort of limited and could penalize suppliers, or could penalize the local resources, or really just sort of fail to recognize the actual value and benefits of a local energy economy. So again, looking forward, there's opportunities to improve some of those systems, and I'll maybe spend a moment. So load settlement. This is really about the utilities matching up customer retail electric use with the amount of power that is purchased by suppliers in the wholesale market. So a utility like Eversource, because they have a meter that generally just takes a reading once a month, they don't have a smart meter. They don't have granular data, and they'll create sort of a class average load shape. They'll just create an average energy usage shape and apply it to all residential customers, and then report that usage to ISO New England in sort of this average fashion. The challenge with that averaging is it doesn't actually reflect how customers are using power. So you could have a customer who generates electricity from solar or has a battery or has an electric vehicle, and they can use these devices to produce power at high cost times or shift power consumption to low cost times. But then that's not reflected in the load settlement system that does the simplified averaging, where they're sort of reporting the customer might be using power because that's what the average class shape would show when actually they're providing power to the grid, or something of this nature. So this is when we get into how we can create a more robust marketplace, and really try to compensate local power producers and involve them in community power. Right now, there's challenges, and there's been ongoing challenges where folks who net meter cannot readily participate in community power because of this load settlement challenge, in part, where there isn't an adequate system to recognize the value of local production and purchase it essentially as an offset to what would otherwise be bought in a wholesale market. So there's more to be done, and yeah, the membership and all involved are sort of looking forward to continue to push forward good, cost-effective, modernized energy policy for the state. And yeah, I'll pause there and happy to take questions, or see if anyone else wants to comment.
We have a chat from David Hemingway. Henry.
Question is, when will the under collections and utility supply rates begin to be reconciled into those rates? And I believe the answer is starting as soon as June or maybe July or August. But we can double check that for you, Dave. I'll also just note, I mean, this is the ruling from the PUC. It's a key testament to the collective voice of the membership. There's between 60 and 70 cities, towns, and counties in Community Power Coalition. There's a lot of partners in industry, in the consumer advocate, and in a number of different areas. And it's clear that the voice of this broad coalition really was heard and did prevail.
I'm not seeing any other questions at this time, Henry, related to that topic. So if there are no other questions on that specific topic, I will just reiterate that yes, this was a big win. It's great to have some positive news coming out of the PUC decision, and totally agree with you that it speaks to the power of community power banding together all these different governmental entities, communities across the state to speak with a collective voice that our decision makers are taking very seriously. And I know the efforts of Clifton, Samuel, Deana. It was a very collaborative group effort, but those folks spent a lot of time coming up with their testimony and input to the process that made a huge difference. So yeah, kudos to all of them. I do see another, I guess, question in the chat now that says, are we still waiting to hear the same thing in the Eversource case, despite the Eversource case being mentioned in this decision?
Yeah, I think there is, like, process-wise, there is an open Eversource stranded cost recovery charge case where they have sort of punted some decisions down the line, and there will be more regulatory process on this matter. But the commission was pretty clear in sort of its acceptance of the sound policy of not cost shifting supply charges. Yeah, Deana.
Yeah, so the Eversource case, and it's a little bit more nuanced because upon discovering that these anomalies that we found, that Clifton found through discovery, was related to uh, errors and malfunctions in their billing and load settlement system, they actually requested that the PUC transfer consideration of the $6.5 million under collection as part of their 2025 default service docket. So they, thought it would be best considered not as part of this stranded cost, non-bypassable delivery charge, but as part of their default service charge. And the commission initially did not agree with them. However, and after some of the commission conducted some of its own discovery or information data requests of the utility. And I think once they got some more information from Eversource, they ultimately decided to transfer it to a future component of that docket, which would be known as a supplemental order of notice. So it'd be a future phase of Eversource's default service docket. And the commission said that that would occur sometime in July. So we expect the commission to take that up over the summer. So what that means is that as it relates for this next default service rate period for Eversource, they won't be including cost recovery of that $6.5 million, but they will be including recovery of more recent under collections. So that is good. And the same for Unitil. And I don't know if Cliff is on. I don't have the order in front of me, but my understanding is that Unitil will be including including this as part of their next default service rate making. So the costs would be they would be seeking recovery through default service rates and starting in this next August to January rate period.
Great. Well, thanks, Deana. Appreciate you adding that additional explanation regarding this, and hopefully that answers your question, Dave. Feel free to let us know if you want more commentary on that subject. All right. Well, seeing none.
I also want to just share, and I'm trying to get the link to put in the chat here. And I don't know if maybe you have it from my email, Jackson. I'm working off my phone right now. But
no worries.
The commission's decision was picked up in the Union Leader yesterday, and they did a cover story, and they included a lot of content from our press statement, as well as some quotes from me, and then also from Unitil. So I think it was good coverage and great to get, such a prominent media hit in the Union Leader.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't have, maybe I probably should, but full access to the Union Leaders articles at this moment on my computer, and I imagine that may be the case for many others as well. So I was able to see the, first intro section of the article, but have not seen a full write-up at this point. But regardless, I'm happy to put it in the chat, and maybe others are able to see the full scope.
Yeah, and for those who don't have access to Union Leader online, I took a screenshot that came from the DuPont group. Every day they send kind of a energy related media and press coverage hits document to folks on their list. So that's a screenshot. Hopefully that's visible to people on the call.
Yes, I'm seeing that now. Thanks, Deana. I appreciate you sending it over in that format, and Mark for putting the link in the chat. That's great. Okay. I will point out that the next office hours session I'm really looking forward to. This was at the request of some folks within the membership to have a session focused on the upcoming rate setting process, joint reserve status, and outlook, as well as related regulatory context. That's scheduled for June 6th. So stay tuned for more information about that. We're going to run it from 11 a.m. to 12:30. So it's going to be an extended session a little bit earlier in the day than normal. So, with questions pertaining to those topics, I would say maybe hold off until that specific session, although I'm sure we could start to answer some questions now if there are some. I guess I'll turn it back to you, Henry, to see if there's anything else that you wanted to cover or mention, feel like folks should be aware of.
I'm all set for now. Looking forward to seeing folks on the next office hours to talk about rate setting process, status and outlook on joint reserves, and maybe recap a little bit of this regulatory update.
Great. All right, so I'll say it's probably last call for questions then, a little bit of a shorter session today, but I hope, everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend and maybe we'll get some sun here. That would be nice as a mood booster, riding the high off a positive, regulatory decision. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Seeing none, I think we'll go ahead and close. Take care.